Powerful winter storm is leaving our area at this hour.
But its presence is still being felt. The first storm of the year didn't deliver deep snow, but smacked us with other problems. High tides pounded Fire Island, flooding the barrier beach in some spots. 20-foot waves eroded a stretch of beach from Fire Island to the Rockaways. Thousands of New Jersey Transit and Amtrak travelers were delayed by downed power lines on the tracks. The snow was high enough to close school in the northern suburbs, parts of Long Island, New Jersey, to the delight of youngsters. Al Roker is tracking what's left of the storm and tells us what to expect next. Al?
Okay, thanks a lot, Sue. And here's the storm now. It is moving away. Our barometer's rising rapidly. A good sign that that's happening. We have right now a temperature of 30 degrees, cloudy skies, and you can see the system now starting to work its way past us. And while you were right, it didn't dump as much snow. It still packed a little bit of a wallop. Take a look. These are some of the accumulations up in Greenwood Lake, New York, 8 inches. Branchville, New Jersey, 4.5. Lebanon, 5 inches. Orange, 2 inches. New Brunswick, 2. Officially Central Park, 1 inch of snow, 3 inches in Rivervale. But look at what the storm dumped just to our west. Western New York, western Pennsylvania, 12 inches to 2 feet of snow. But as you take a look at Doppler 4 right now, you'll see we are pretty high and dry right now. Good news. Here's what's going on. Here's the low pressure system. It is moving away as the winds shift out of the northwest. We may get another shot of snow, but the bad news is cold air is going to come in and freeze everything that's on the ground right now. So tomorrow morning may be a very, very slick rush. We'll have more details on that and details of another storm that may be headed our way later on in the week. Matt?
All right, Al, thank you very much. Well, remembering last winter's big storms, people living near the shore braced themselves for what could have been the worst. The big worries, losing their homes to flooding and erosion. On Long Island's South Shore, Freeport, foot-high waters flooded streets, turning roadways into rivers. Forget about basements. In many homes, the first floor was underwater. Fortunately, levels are starting to subside. But Freeport is not alone. News 4's Tiwa Chang joins us live now from Seagate in Brooklyn with the latest there. Tiwa?
Well, Matt, we're on 42nd Street, and right now the Atlantic Ocean is fairly calm. But 12 hours earlier, the ocean waves are pounding against this seawall. Every January now, the Atlantic Ocean became a rude neighbor for the Seagate residents once again, splashing waves of 20 to 30 feet into their backyards. The ocean then sent a river up the side streets, flooding several blocks away and angering some residents about the sewage drainage system, or lack thereof.
It clogged up in 2 seconds, you know? So.
Very sad. This used to be a beautiful garden spot, and it's just depressing to look at it. There's nothing left. It's all gone.
How's this compared to last year?
Not as bad as last year, but bad.
Lenny and Joan Brickman have lived most of their lives in Seagate, this private Brooklyn community built on a landfill by the ocean. But this is the first time they've seen plants from the gardens of homes by the Atlantic floating by their house 2 blocks away.
From here, and they were floating all the way up Surf Avenue.
How far is that from here?
We live about a block and a half around the corner.
And how deep was the water when it was floating? Flooding in the basements of homes this time, just a couple of homes compared to last year when many homes had water inside their basements. And all this debris you see here, most of it is left over from last year's Noreaster, but there's a little bit, just a new layer of debris, as it were, that's littering above last year's debris and on the streets this time. They say high tide will be back again around 1:30. They don't expect to be as bad as it was earlier today because the wind will be blowing in a different direction. Reporting live at Seagate, Tiwa Chang, News 4 New York. Now back to the studio.
Tiwa, thank you. Well, the storm kicked out power to thousands, most on Long Island. 3,000 households there are still without power. Lilco promises to work through the night, restore all power. The big struggle in Midtown was fierce winds and freezing rain. Here's Don Williams.
It couldn't have happened at a worse time. A river of water covered the tracks at the 14th Street subway station just before the bulk of rush hour traffic began, when a water main broke. It cut the city in half for commuters riding the 1, the 9, 2, and 3 lines. Downtown subway riders could only get to 42nd Street. Uptown passengers were cut off before 14th Street. It was the wind that beat up on New Yorkers on their way to work. It followed late-night snow and early-morning freezing rain and made sidewalks and roadways treacherous for a while.
I thought it was going to be colder, but it's slippery. And so it's kind of scary crossing the streets and stuff.
I got to be very careful because at my age I could break bones very easily. So I've got the right kind of shoes and I'm just walking very, very carefully.
At the Bergdorf Goodman department store, a vicious gust of wind knocked out a Fifth Avenue display window. And when a man was fished from the East River after he was spotted flailing in the water, the wind and freezing temperatures may have made it impossible for him to hold on to the rope thrown to him by 2 police officers who were trying to rescue him. He later died. Before the end of the day, the snow was melting away, and what threatened to be a huge winter storm turned out to be more of an aggravation than anything else. Don Williams, News 4, New York.
Well, tonight's subway service on the lines affected by the water main break is back to normal, and a reminder, alternate side of the street parking is suspended tomorrow.
In New Jersey, it was also a very messy day. Drivers using the bridges and tunnels had to allow some extra time. New Jersey reporter Carlos Granda was all over the state today as residents coped at home and on the commute. And he is live in Newark. Carlos?
Well, Matt, we're at Penn Station right now, where New Jersey Transit trains and Amtrak trains going in and out of New York City are now back on schedule. There were system-wide delays throughout the day, as most trains had to run on a single track. We'll get more about that in just a moment. Now, this snowstorm, it wasn't as strong as some people had predicted, but don't tell that to commuters. For people who had to take a train or drive into work, it was a nightmare. Before dawn, the snowplows were out in force trying to keep the roads clear, but at times they just couldn't keep up with the snow and freezing rain. Route 3, both in and out of the city, was a slushy mess for the morning commute. It was much the same story on other roadways, and that resulted in a few accidents, like this one on Route 17. Most people were driving very carefully.
Coming to work in my car, miserable. Very slow, very slick, and very dangerous.
Oh, we've been driving mainly on the main avenues just so that we can avoid the side streets and avoid the accidents.
Motorists who didn't want to deal with the hassles of chipping away ice and shoveling snow took mass transit, but that didn't help much either.
Everything is delayed indefinitely right now.
New Jersey Transit and Amtrak trains were stopped in their tracks as ice ravaged power lines between Newark and New York City. Thousands of commuters along the busy Northeast Corridor were stranded.
It was moving along okay, and then all of a sudden they lost power, and that was it. Next thing you know, we got stuck behind a bunch of trains, and we're 2 hours late at least.
Freezing rain and wind also wreaked havoc with power lines, and that led to outages throughout the state. PSE&G crews worked all night, and about 17,000 customers were without power during the storm, most in southern New Jersey, but the power company is worried about tonight.
It looks like some pretty low temperatures, freezing weather, and more precipitation. It could be a problem on the roads, and we could see more problems ourselves.
Station says most major highways are in pretty good shape at this hour, cleared of slush and snow, but with temperatures dropping, ice could be a problem, so anyone going home now or driving anytime tonight, take it slow. Reporting live, I'm Carlos Granda, News 4 from Penn Station in Newark. Now back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Carlos. Air travel wasn't easy either on this stormy day. There are delays at all 3 area airports. The problem is not only bad weather here, but bad weather causing delays at airports where flights were originating from. Shadow Traffic Jackie Meyer-Sims is here with the latest update for travelers. Jackie?
Well, Sue, as you mentioned, that most of our problems tonight do seem to be centered around the area airports. Traycon telling us that up to 40% of all area flights have been canceled, and specifically at Newark Airport, they are running a staggered departure system. That means the airport will only allow a limited number of departures per hour. Those flights are then distributed among the airlines. They then decide which flights take off. And at Kennedy Airport, as you can see, we've got delays of up to an hour on domestic arrivals, international arrivals on time, departures in good shape. Finally, at LaGuardia, both runways are operational, but the ground services report is that lots of flights have been canceled. Now, in addition to all of this, we've gotten word that American has canceled all flights at all 3 airports until sometime tomorrow. Delta has also canceled its flights out of Newark. Back to you.
Jackie, thanks. Well, we have much more ahead for you on News 4 at 6 on this Noreaster of 94. We're live on the south shore of Long Island, where rising tides spilled over into local streets and made driving more than a little treacherous. We'll also take you to northern Westchester, where snow, not floods, caused school closings and also closed some businesses. Plus, we'll be giving you a lesson that could save you from an accident. An expert will teach us how to drive on ice. That is all ahead.
Before buried some roads and washed away beaches. And tonight, the big worries are flooding and ice. This was Shore Parkway in Nassau County moments ago. The slick streets are being blamed for a jump in fender benders. And folks are still treading carefully in New Jersey while drivers are being urged to go slow tonight. Icy conditions are expected. Well, Al has been tracking the storm all day, and he has the latest right now. Al.
Well, thanks a lot, Carol. And these are some of the snowfall totals. Officially Central Park, 1 inch, 2 inches in Orange, New Jersey, New Brunswick, 2. New City, 4, 8 inches in Greenwood Lake, and Islip, 3 inches of snow. Now the storm is moving away. That's good news. The bad news is, as it pulls away, nature abhors a vacuum, and so we have a big drop. As the pressure leaves, it's got to pull something in behind it, and what that's going to be is cold northwesterly winds. So all that glop that's on the ground is going to freeze tonight as temperatures fall into the teens and 20s. Tomorrow morning's rush hour, another mess. You're going to want to allow yourself a little extra time. And the bad news is we've got another storm headed this way. We'll tell you what that means a little bit later. Chuck?
All right, Al, thank you. This first nor'easter of '94 gave us a day of treacherous driving and mangled mass transit. In New Jersey, people who tried to drive faced heavy snow, strong winds, and icy roads that clogged up almost as fast as they were plowed. On the rails, ice ripped down Amtrak power cables outside Newark, and that knocked out the Northeast Corridor service and crippled New Jersey transit until this afternoon. And what a time for a water main break. Below that buckled pavement in Chelsea, water filled the subway tracks, knocking out the number 1 and 9 trains below 42nd Street. And above ground, walking to work, men leaning into the biting wind and navigating through slush. And there are flooding problems on Long Island. Jim PAYMAR is live in Freeport for us right now. Jim?
Well, Chuck, the rain has stopped, the winds have died down, the tide is out. Actually, a pretty nice night right now here in Freeport, but earlier today, some rough going here on the South Shore.
It's been a wet and wild day along the South Shore. The most serious blow from the storm was beach erosion from Fire Island to the Rockaways. 20-foot waves smashed the coast, carrying away much of the beach that was left from last year's nor'easter. For the rest of the South Shore, a miserable, sloppy day. The rain, snow, and sleet made for slow going on the roadways. There was the occasional tree limb blown down from last night's high winds. Chipping through the ice on the sidewalks and scraping the windshields marked this day. Along the coast, people were bracing for the worst. It's high tide here at Reynolds Channel in the town of Long Beach, and the water is pretty calm, a far cry from what happened here last year.
During that flood, this street right in front of this house here was about 3 feet, 4 feet high of water. People are a little bit on edge today, but I don't think anybody's really worried like we were last year.
But Long Beach police were preparing just in case Mother Nature got nasty again.
We're looking out for flooding on the main thoroughfares, and if that condition materializes, then we're going to shut down the roadways.
In Freeport, the high tides pushed a lot of water onto streets, creating small ponds, just a way of life in this neck of the woods.
Well, I was trying to get through to my area, and the water was coming inside my car. I had to back off. I thought I would never get home again.
Well, all in all, the first nor'easter of '94 didn't pack a whole lot of punch. However, they are expecting high tides in Freeport again at 1 o'clock this morning. Right now, all is clear, and people around here are saying, come on down to the restaurants. Reporting live from Freeport, Jim PAYMAR, News 4 New York.
All right, Jim, thank you. And Loco says about 3,000 people on eastern Long Island are still in the dark. At the height of the storm, 48,000 customers were without power.
Well, the storm is bringing rising waters to other parts of the shore. At Seagate on the tip of Coney Island, high waves leaped over barrier walls and onto the streets. The damage extended into Coney Island about a mile away. And flooding hit the Jersey Shore community of Seabright, as it does almost every time there's a major storm. Tides were 5 feet above normal, but there were no evacuations.
The northern suburbs got hit hard by the storm. Schools were closed in Westchester, and some people even talked about going skiing. Mary Civillo has more for us.
Operation Snowbird and Mike Cernoff.
It is 11:05, and taking a look at some of the cancellations.
It would have been easier for Mike Cernoff to read what was open in northern Westchester, southern Putnam counties today.
Canceled for today. There are no meals. And finally, Yorktown Senior Nutrition Center is closed today.
But all the closings meant a lot less traffic on major thoroughfares like 684. By noon today, no major traffic accidents, only fender benders.
In Bedford Hills, close to the Putnam County line, the railroad station lot stood half full, and those that didn't go to work weren't shopping here. Most businesses closed, except ALDO SAMMARCO's barber shop.
Hey, everybody's closing up. I can't figure that out. Yeah. You know, we used to have those big storms.
All the time.
All the time, every 10 years.
Kids weren't complaining. With all 17 northern Westchester school districts closed today, backyards were busy. Moms like Lynn Ryan know they'll be busy with a mountain of wet clothes.
I make them undress in the garage. That way, we try to keep the moisture outside.
Now for the fun. Mary Civillo, News 4 New York.
And, of course, Al is going to have much more on the storm and the next wave of snow that's on the way. Next wave, I said, just a little bit later in this broadcast.
Well, last night we told you about the carjacking that turned
right now. The first major casualty was Amtrak train service along its vital eastern corridor from Washington to New York. Shut down when ice brought power lines down. It later reopened with 3-hour delays. 15,000 passengers were affected. The swirling storm system originated in the south and dropped rain, sleet, and snow from Alabama to Maine. In its swath, paralyzing snowfall amounts: 14 inches in Charleston, West Virginia, 28 inches in Waynesburg, Pennsylvania, and 18 inches in Binghamton, New York, with more on the way. Air travel in much of the country was hit hard. Airports like Boston's Logan had a hard time keeping runways open and jets ready to fly. And in Pittsburgh, a total shutdown. Close to 400 flights canceled, stranding passengers as far south as Miami.
They told us that Pittsburgh's closed till 6 o'clock at night, and just have to wait and maybe stay the night and catch a flight tomorrow.
Ohio's governor declared a state of emergency in several counties. Close to a dozen states reported school closings and power outages. Along the Atlantic coast, the problem was gale winds and coastal flooding. The biggest city on the storm's path, New York, was spared the brunt of the heavier snow for the most part. But with the entire region still battered and digging out, the forecast calls for the next storm system to roll through by week's end. Brian Williams, NBC News, New York.